Smart 24 TV, and this is the time where we cross across borders, starting with how the World Bank hands China contractors 624 million US dollars road project in Kenya. Let's dive into this one, how it works greatly.
Before you even dive, I think Chinese are everywhere in Africa. So there was a time I was looking at a documentary. China set up almost a city in Angola. And it's a beautiful city filled up with it is one that is filled up with a very huge real estate sector where they have a lot of mortgages in there. There are a lot of apartments. And now even in the Democratic Republic of Congo, China is still doing the same moves. And again in China, and surprisingly, the Exim Bank in China is still demanding a lot of money from Kenya. One of those Chinese banks that is demanding money from there. So if at all you look at this particular one, well.
Yes, it's been contracting around 624 million for road projects across there. But also as a country here, we have benefited from Chinese projects. But it also comes again with the agreements that the two countries or states really have to agree on. Whether you negotiate, if you negotiate proper, that means business is going to be a good one.
The public is always left behind during these negotiations. It is after the deals have been sealed, done, then we start looking at the effects of the deal. The public will only look at the advantages because that is what in most cases African governments provide. Then it's in the long run that you hear we are supposed to pay a certain amount. Or this is what we're supposed to contribute towards what, because I do believe with this generation that we're in, someone is not willing to offer without receiving in the long run. It may not be instant, but it's a win-win situation. It's a 50-50. If I'm constructing this road for you, funiramuwa.
But that's a business, but the key here, the key highlight here is how to play good in business. How do you make sure, how do you make sure you don't be greedy around doing business, because greed is not good in business. But how do you also make sure your citizens are getting enough sustainable development, enough sustainable living, even when you're lobbying for certain projects? It's one thing, lobbying for a road that you're not going to walk on. Your citizens are not going to have a path on towards that walk, and you're lobbying for that particular construction or infrastructure. And also it's another where you are lobbying for a certain entity where you are to see that a lot is going to be very beneficial across there. So it is all hands on to making sure that we really contract very well. But towards this one, on World Bank hands on Chinese contractors about 624 million road projects in Kenya. The Chinese contractors actually farmed their control of Kenya's public infrastructure, receiving the bulk of the World Bank funded projects. And a recent sample of Kenya National Highways Authority road projects worth 71.9 billion Kenyan shillings. That's around the 624 million funded by the multilateral lender and also the lender and government, with all being contracted by Chinese contractors. When you look at the bank, what they said here, not giving general, comments and respect to individual contractors, awards under the bank financed operations. Has this not happened around this country?
Happened quite a long time. See, there are a lot of things that happen here in Uganda, and it is, someone once said, the impossible are always possible in Uganda. But besides this situation, when you look at, we've seen Kenya's road projects some time back, and we realize the infrastructure is on point. At a time when we can say even ours, when you look at this
maybe
up-country
apart
roads,
from the Entebbe Express.
Some of the up-country roads are also okay here in Uganda. For those that have traveled to the southwestern Uganda, there are some good roads there. Mbale has some good roads. The northern part of Uganda has some good roads. I think the bigger challenge is still in the central part, or mainly around the eastern region as well. So, but when you look at this situation, I still believe African governments are going to continuously borrow money, a lot of money from the international monetary funds and different fundings from the global scene. But this also is going to learn something, a negative effect on how best can we live without being under the shadows of these particular international powers. Because
So you just mentioned something that infrastructure around the country seems to be better, much better in regards to roads around up country. Until you had the city or central regions or most populated areas, for example, Kampala and even different cities. Then why? That means there is a problem. That means maybe there is high demand of you know, of walkways, high demand of maybe roads, proper roads. I mean, this is a busy area. And also they tend to break down easily, because if you look at a city like Kampala,
as they are constructing, people are still using the same routes. So it becomes very difficult, by the way.
But no, at some point we really give government project space, Sonko. We give them space. They, I mean, they seal off that area out of bounds. Citizens here tend to abide, by the way, by the law around construction.
During daytime. You see,
During daytime, for
I've
sure.
realized something. I think, was it 2 weeks back, I used a taxi as I was heading home, late in the night at around 8:30. Around 9:30 p.m. Apparently, there are traffic lights around Clock Tower. And now this taxi driver says, because there is a flyover that Kampala City Council Authority is constructing around the area. So the reason is why they put these traffic lights to control traffic. During daytime, it's easy to control because even the traffic officers are there. And now this driver apparently found someone in his own vehicle parking, and because the traffic lights had already showed a red sign, which means you need to stop. So he even parked and mocked him and said, "Katigwe sebo. Oyimirira kulwaki?" So he had to just move in. That is why I normally say it is during daytime that they respect. But when it's nighttime, even if they are constructing in a lane, they will still pass there. That is why we have a very huge challenge.
So you're saying most of the
developments
citizens
here
are, I mean, during daytime,
becomes very
obeying
difficult to
maybe
control a very huge population in times. That is why in most cases, when you go to a class in school, a class that has fewer students, it is easier for the teacher to control. But for a class that has over 200 students, you'll find a challenge with the teacher controlling, because someone would actually make some noise from a different angle, and then you try to trace who is talking, another person will start talking from the other end. So as you're trying to trace, it becomes very difficult.
And just to continue moving on this particular cross-border story here, it was also just indicated that the ongoing operation in Kenya of around 6.58 billion US dollars, that's around 746.8 billion Kenyan shillings, is under the implementation. But the domination of the World Bank road tenders shows that Chinese contractors may have very competitive and may be very competitive compared to the Western peers, and the disputes, the assumptions that they use underhands deals into the capture of road tenders. But the World Bank here has also robusted operation and contractual frameworks for procurement, including procurement regulations that is matured closely by the board of executive directors representing all stakeholders. All tenders funded and multilateral lenders are assembled based on the core principles of the value of money economically integrated for the purpose, efficiency, transparency, and also fairness.
There is some way you mentioned about operation. Trying to look for the operation. It got me back to the Operation Shuja. You know, Operation Shuja by the UPDF. Let's say I'm going Operation Shuja.
Why do you like
in the
that
Democratic
Shuja
Republic.
operation?
No, I still want to understand. I want to understand what the name means. Shuja.
It's like chaka mchaka. Chaka mgulu, not Samriat. I mean, when I was still little, I used to, use that word a lot. Chaka mchaka, chaka mgulu. I don't know. Maybe it is something like that. Operation Shuja.
Every time I hear the word operation, it gets back to me. Operation Shuja.
It's connected to a Japanese.
Those movies, karate.
So
Japanese
maybe the contracting there or the argument is around everything will be,
Shuja. Sugar.
Moving on.
Okay. And besides that, let's try to look at what is happening from Nigeria as the European Union business executives have brainstormed Nigeria's business environment. Nigeria is one of Africa's greatest economies and strongest economies. When you look at that, South Africa, Nigeria, Egypt, Tanzania is also one of those. But when you look at this, the European Union officials in Lagos held a meeting with members of the European Business Chamber in Nigeria, that is the Eurocham, to delegate opportunities and challenges of doing business in the country. The discussion was held ahead of a meeting between the European Union Commission Vice President Margaret Vestager and top Nigerian government officials in Abuja. That was over last weekend. Eurocham is a business group uniting the main European investors and corporate organizations in Nigeria. And it was launched at the EU-Nigeria Business Forum in October 2018 by the European Union ambassador. The meeting afforded members of the European Business Chamber in Nigeria, that is the Eurocham, to highlight some of the challenges their businesses face in the country. So they were looking at how they can make Nigeria a better working place for the European Union member states, because they believe a number of Europeans have businesses in Nigeria. We can also agree that Nigeria is one of the oil nations that we have in Africa. So it's even under OPEC, that particular organization that combines almost all the oil operating countries.
But also when you look at business forums, let's now compare it to business forums across Africa, business forums we have had around the country where Uganda has really benefited. What should always be the main move or drive of our business forums around this country? Because I mean, we have had a lot of business forums. The recent one was in Ethiopia. We've had business forums in Dubai, entirely across so many countries that the country here gets into integration with to resolve business. But what exactly should always drive us to these business forums?
Late in November, there was a forum as well. It was early November, to be precise. There was a forum when the Tunisian delegation visited the country, to Uganda. Now, one of the key things that were highlighted during this visit was that the Tunisians looked at a market in Uganda, and the Ugandans were looking at a market in Tunisia. So when we have such discussions, now why we have this situation of the European investors, they wanted to try and see, are they really making the money? Or it's the Nigerians benefiting from the exportation? So with such forums, they help you understand, because these are discussions whereby two bodies meet and you discuss a lot of talks to do with business.
And for me, it should be not just a discussion. I feel like there should be something more than just a discussion. I mean, Uganda and Kenya coming together, Uganda and China, Japan coming together and say, okay, we want market, I mean, in your area, Japan, we want, and then the Japanese, Shuja. That's how you know what, we want a market in Uganda. So to me, I mean, what we should always be specific in what we really want, because sometimes it's going to land us into maybe uncertainties or unpreparedness, because we have seen we are producing producers here, products, but again at some point in the market, bidiba, they are tarnished back down. So that means that our negotiations were not better during this forum at some point.
It is either one of the two parties may, because in most cases what brings us to such a point is either one of the two parties benefits.
Yeah, benefits more than the other, of course. And I tend to believe, they say, what is in the beauty holder?
Beauty lies in the hands of the beholder.
Okay, in the beholder's hands. I mean, you have got it in your hands. It's upon you to table very well, to arrange your arguments very well, and have an effective discussion, or even not just a discussion, have this effective measures and factors, and really, I can say practical or even visible, visible factors that we can implement to make sure we go ahead. Just to conclude on these ones, on the EU Business Forum with maybe Nigeria, we're having a coming up business forum for Uganda here, just in a week, around 23rd. It will be, that will be now the DRC Uganda Business Forum 2022. I mean, sometimes it's coming up on 23rd.
And
that
President Museveni had just been there on a visit, in talking business and all that.
Now this one is now entitled surely on how we are going to be tapping into the western part of the DRC, how Uganda, what opportunities will be arising from us tapping into DRC vis-a-vis really, or what even can we add more on to tap into other countries. But if we are not organized, it is going to also be some other trouble. But moving on, we're going to look at how Donald Trump's accountants cut ties and say financial statements are no longer reliable. Take us through this one, Joel.
The Donald Trump organization.
Okay.
Well, ever since he left the United States, a little bit of the politics. But he first, there was a lot of, there was two times he was impeached. He's one of those
I like the
presidents.
energy there.
He was one of those presidents that faced a very huge challenge with media, because the way he would respond to them. At the time when he actually left, most of the political critics used to refer to him more of an African president. Why? Because it is in Africa where the loser in a political election does not believe they lost. So Donald Trump was not contented with the results of the poll.
Africa?
But when you look at so
when
they were
you
saying,
compare South African
that is
really
what
kind of
they-
allegation culture really related onto that.
that is how the critics had to put it, that they try to compare him to most of the African leaders. Most of the dictators that already,
really.
yes.
Because I mean, to me, a leader would really want to give chance for other leaders
Politicians
to take
who don't
on.
accept that have lost an election. So Donald Trump still believes, in terms of politics, that he may even stand for the next poll that will come up. But when you look at the fact that he's one of the wealthiest men in the United States, but Donald Trump's long-term accounting firm has cut ties with the former U.S. president, saying a decade of annual financial statement it prepared for the Trump organization can no longer be relied upon. The statements of financial condition, which Donald Trump used to secure loans from parts of 2 law enforcement investigations into the Trump organization. The Trump organization is that of Donald Trump. In a letter to the organization that had been dated 9th February this very year, the accounting firm Mazars urged Donald Trump to tell the lenders the statements issued between 2011 to 2020 are no longer deemed reliable. There are also some cases and allegations against Donald Trump that ever since he was president, his businesses were not paying taxes. He has a Trump Tower. So all these allegations were coming out saying that since he was in power, free of charge. So he was not entitled to taxation. Yet it is not mandatory. It is actually illegal. It is a mandate. Whether you are the president or not, you're not above the law. So when you look at this, the letter has been public through a filing from the office of the New York Attorney General, Letitia James, as part of their civil investigations into whether Donald Trump inaccurately represented his financial circumstances when either seeking loans or limiting his tax liability. The Manhattan District Attorney's Office has zeroed in on the financial documents in its separate criminal fraud investigations into the Trump Organization's practices, according to the New York Times. So when you look at the Trump Organization practices, also include the case where we've been mentioning that he didn't want to pay these taxes, and he's actually having some huge challenges when it comes to the courts of law. Also
Let us
commercial
put
courts.
this into a context of business and politics here, really. I mean, he's a businessman, yes, I agree. And all this is coming out after he's no longer president of the United States, right? So that means when he was president, he was not being pinned onto how he was how he was defying taxation.
The pinning was a bit slight when he was the president, because at least you give him that space. He's the leader.
Then why?
Because most
you
of
mean when he's president, he's not on the law. He's above the law.
You see, I think, I don't know why it happens this way. That in most cases, once a leader has charges, they wait for him to first get done with his term.
Are you sure?
Then they face them.
On the cost, I mean, the are you sure is coming from a context of on whose cost now? The citizens are going to be suffering. That is why you're seeing some governments, still being pinned towards, because you can imagine if a certain sector isn't paying tax, but the revenue collection still has, to be generated. That means there has to be a squeezed area at some point to make sure we squeeze out some part of the revenue that isn't being collected from the other part. And I'm referring it now to our government here. For instance, if at all maybe there happens to be a change of government at any point or at any time or any point really, what do you foretell in regards to businesses that have been supporting maybe the nation, supporting the youth, supporting women, supporting if there happens to be change of government. At least the US, we have seen an organized maybe transformation, slightly with the demonstration a little bit, which does not really happen for a prolonged time. Does that tend to be revealed in African countries? From what you really have observed, from what you have been watching, from what reports tell, just your analysis on that. Do you see that being revealed in Africa?
Most of the African presidents that we have, once the African president is done with, let's say, his presidential term of about 2 terms or 3 terms of successful ruling of the country, once they are done with that, you're going to see a number of crimes affiliated to them. And it normally happens once they are done. That is when you hear the International Criminal Court coming in saying, now, this gentleman here is... has cases regarding this
corruption cases, allegations of corruption,
embezzlement. So it was quite difficult for this to come when Donald Trump was president.
That is what I'm exactly now revealing at Joram.
He still had a very huge...
Because it is costing the people.
Because he's the leader now. He's leading the country. So that you'll have to first wait for him. Once he's done, you treat him as an ordinary citizen in would I say, in a honorary way.
But again, that is where the judiciary should come in. I mean, if the law is there, no one is above a certain law, let us then respect that. If there is an embezzlement, at least we have seen Jacob Zuma. He was, herded after being president, but again, if there is an embezzlement anywhere or any misconduct around your area or your governance, it shouldn't really be a massive judgment.
But
that's because he's president now. Let us wait. What if he dies as president, for example?
It also goes back to the voters of these presidents. You see, Jacob Zuma had charges and he was guilty. But then his voters, or I would say his supporters, were not happy with that. The situation whereby the gentleman you're supporting heavily, he's a criminal. But because you're saying he's a former president, we need to give him this respect, but he was above the law. So it also goes back to that.
Okay. So the public should also try to be considerate here of really pinning if there is a misconduct.
So that this person doesn't have anything to do with his defensive. He's non-defensive. So that he doesn't have any shuja in him.
Okay, and that will take us to a break. We'll be returning shortly. SMB continues right here. Stick around.